Welcome to our weekly roundtable discussion by Law Enforcement Coaching, where each week we have unscripted conversations on relevant topics for law enforcement and our first responder community. This week, we discuss the importance of incorporating martial arts training into defensive tactics for law enforcement, with Kajukenbo Grand Master and owner of NAC Martial Arts Center, Sal Banuelos. We appreciate you tuning in and hope you find some useful insights and information from these discussions.
All right, thank you all for being here. Thank you to those that are tuning in. We are here on another weekly roundtable, and this week we are going to talk about the importance of having some form of martial arts training. Everybody should know Chris and I, we are the founders of Law Enforcement Coaching. We are joined by our Chief of Staff and our roundtable regular, Greg Nottingham, and we have a very special guest today. Sal, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and your background and why you're here.
Awesome. Well, hello to everybody. My name is Sal. Last name is Banuelos, and right now I received the title Grand Master in the art of Kajukenbo. So a lot of people don't know what Kajukenbo is. Basically, it's a mixed martial art, born in 1947, and it's the word Ka for karate, Ju is for judo, jiu-jitsu, Ken is for kempo, and Bo for boxing, which makes it a great combination for street self-defense. And so I've been doing it since 1976, and we opened our dojo in 1989, and we're still going strong. So I'm happy to be here with you guys, and hopefully we could learn together.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being an excellent instructor for transparency. Chris and I are both trained under you, and his son is also learning from you as well. And so we thank you for being here. So as we get into this conversation today, we're going to talk about a few things, but Chris, let's start with your martial arts background a little bit so that everybody knows where you're at with that.
Yeah, so I started training with Grand Master back when you were a professor in 2008. I was working undercover narcotics, and I attended one of your training sessions. It was knife fighting, and what really caught my attention. Prior to that, I'd never stepped foot in a martial arts gym, but the way you taught that day really, it opened my mind to, the potential dangers that we are in, especially being in law enforcement. But you also showed how to hold a knife, how to strike, how to counter somebody with a knife. And these are all things that, working in the law enforcement world, we're always dealing with people I'm saying people. I was going to say suspects, but we don't really know who a suspect is and who a friendly person is, who a bad guy is. But a lot of these people that we dealt with, especially doing drug deals, are armed. They're either armed with a gun, armed with a knife. And so oftentimes I'd go undercover by myself with one pistol on me. And, potentially if I have to fight my way out of a situation, I really wasn't prepared physically on how to fight properly. The academy, they teach you very basic stuff. So going to your class, it resonated with me. And the way you taught things that were for the street. You taught things that are not traditionally in some martial arts where it's going to work on the mat, but on the street, it's a completely different environment, and it might not work on the street. So you were very good at explaining the difference and articulating. You're in law enforcement. Here's what you need to consider. I'm going to teach you this way. So that's really what got me into training, and I really liked the MMA side of things, and the weapon systems here, right? The weapon retention, the use of a knife, an edge weapon. That stuff really, I really liked, and I really enjoyed that. That's what really caught my attention. So, and I've been working with you on and off, throughout the years, and so that's my experience.
Awesome.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go.
Now, I was going to say, working with police officers is a lot. I said this earlier, but it's a lot different. We have a regular Joe, regular dad who wants to work out, and we have a police officer that wants to work out. So I seem to cater to the police officer for their needs. Taking somebody down, controlling them, and showing them, how to use a blade. Just a little more detail with police officers. I think they need that, though.
What is sir, in your experience, what is the main difference that you see when you're training a police officer versus the average person? Like, what do you take into consideration?
Well, I take it, that the fact that their life is in danger every day, every single moment they put on that batch and they put that to get on that car, they might not come back home. So I take that really seriously. So I want to make sure that it's not foo-foo karate they're learning. It's learning the real deal, and then we have it. We basically they learn it, they practice it, they master it, but we have to make it practical. We have to put it in action. So basically, test mode. So we'll get different attackers come in different ways, and it might not look pretty, but we want it effective. And then everything's not done with like the 1 and the 2 and the 3 in a sequence. It might be one here and a bit of step number 4, but we get it done and we make it. We basically test everything with the police officers. So that's my thing. Your average Joe, he's doing it for recreation. We just, we'll teach him the traditional, but the police officer will teach him a little bit of dirty fighting, a little bit of staying alive. That's the difference.
Well, and that's an important part, is the staying alive part of it. And actually, so with Kajukenbo particularly, when it was created, it was kind of created based on, does it work on the street? And if it does work and it's repetitive and there's success with it, then that's what got put into forming what Kajukenbo is. And if it didn't work, it got removed from the training. So can you guys share a little bit about, I know that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very, very popular and very effective. And there can be a little bit of hindrance when it comes to law enforcement only relying on Jiu-Jitsu. Am I correct in that? You guys want to speak on that?
I'll let Chris take it. You want to take that, Chris?
Well, no, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very popular now, and it's a great martial arts to train in. But you also have to recognize it's got its limitations. On the mat, you can pull guard on somebody, and BJJ practitioners are very, very comfortable on their back on the ground. But if you pull guard on somebody on a sidewalk, the suspect has to do is just slam the back of your head into the concrete, and if you survive, you're not going to be waking up for who knows how long. You can create some potential risks. You're adding that risk if you're just training strictly, if you're just reacting using what you learned in the dojo, or what you learned in the gym on the streets. In the dojo, there's a mat. It's nice and soft, right? And we're wearing, gis. On the street, on the sidewalk, you're on hard surfaces, right? So you can't pull guard on somebody. You're going to get knocked out, or you might even get killed if you try that. The other thing too is the gear that we wear. The outer vest carriers that law enforcement wears. We carry all the weapons that are needed to kill us. We bring that to a fight every time. So you have to know the limitations of whatever you're training in. Now, don't get me wrong; it can be very effective, but there's a difference between sport, training for a title, training for a belt, versus training to save your own life. There's a big difference there in the mentality. This is not sport. When we have to go and use force on somebody, we're not fighting for a title. We're not fighting for fame or for fortune. We're fighting so we can go home. So it's a big difference. So just knowing the limitations, and that goes with any art. Whether it's BJJ, whether it's with boxing, whether it's with Muay Thai and judo, you've got to understand what are the benefits of it and how do you use it most effectively on the streets for law enforcement. And sir, I don't know, maybe you can explain it a little bit more, articulate it better than I did.
Well, the thing about the street, there was a natural situation that happened, and I'm not, basically jiu-jitsu, former student goes back to the dojo, they get in a competition, they get in a fight, and I believe the instructor took the guy down, and got him in the guard, and the former student took out a blade and stabbed him several times. So that's the bad thing about, you don't know what weapons he might have on him. So, and then, once you get him in the guard, he might draw a weapon, a knife, and, he could stab you all kinds of ways. So it's, it's dangerous. It's very effective one-on-one, but also in known weapons,
Well,
yeah.
let's talk.
If they're hiding the weapon and you don't know, and you take them down, you treat them like a regular guy, you might be in trouble.
Well, let's talk about really quick. So Greg and Chris too. So where your weapons are placed on, because we have a lot of younger officers that they're new to wearing a vest. They're not quick. They don't know where everything's at. So let's talk about some of the effective placements of things and things to be aware of where things should go and what that looks like of keeping yourself safe just from the vest perspective. Greg, do you want to add in like?
Well, I'm not sure if there are any regulations or policies that will dictate to the officer where they wear their taser, how they wear their taser. I believe there used to be that your taser needed to be on your offhand side. It needed to be a reverse draw so that you didn't accidentally mistake it for your gun. That's happened in the past. And I have seen some officers that wear their tasers on their chest, and that probably has gone away more now because they've got the camera on there. So I think that where you wear your weapons are going to be where you can get to them the most conveniently, the quickest, the easiest. You have access to them, and you're able to get them and defend yourself that way if you have to.
Also too on the carrying the weapons, you got to practice drawing from where you're holding it. So a lot of people put them on, and they don't practice how to get it out quick. So you got to practice drawing their weapons out, drawing their blade, and sometimes some officers carry their blades in their chest, and some of them carry in the back. And you got to be like a master of habit. So you got to have it in the same place all the time. So without thinking, you could draw. And I don't think they practice enough on the drawing their weapons all the time. Also, too, when they carry a certain holster, and Chris could back me up on this one, they carry for work a certain holster, and then when they're off duty, they carry another different holster. And I think I heard the story from Mr. Chris here that the guy tried to draw, but it was a different holster, and he wasn't used to it, so it got delayed and he got shot, pretty much. So
yeah, and we hear that oftentimes, especially back early in my career. Uncle Mike's had a holster that most law enforcement around the valley would carry. It looked cool, right? It was like it had like two or three locking mechanisms. But if you weren't familiar with it, some officers couldn't figure out how to remove it, how to get it out of the holster. So yeah, it is important that you train with whatever you're carrying with and know how to make it second nature. So understand it. And there's a difference between carrying on duty on your hip versus off duty concealed, right? It's going to be different locations. It's going to be a completely different holster system that you're going to be using, because you're not going to use typically the same type of holster you would when you're on duty on your hip versus one that's concealed on your waistline. So you got to train both ways. Working undercover, we always trained how to draw from a concealed position. And I would recommend any officer that carries concealed, you got to practice drawing from it. As a matter of fact, when you have to qualify with whatever weapon you're going to be carrying with the holster the way you would carry it. So if you're carrying it under your shirt on your waistline area, when you go qual with that, you're going to be doing the exact same thing you would off duty. You're going to reach for your t-shirt or whatever shirt you're wearing, grab it, lift it up, and then reach for that holster, because a lot of times those holsters are very deep in the waistline to help with concealment. And so you might have a little trouble getting a good grip on it. So that's why you got to practice. I like carrying a nice deep holster when it's concealed. That way nobody can tell it's there. But I also understand the limitation of it. It's going to take me a little bit longer to draw it because it's not presented to me, at a higher level. So, but I've worked undercover for many, many years, been a cop for 23 years, and I carried concealed the entire time. So I'm very schooled at that. But sir, let me ask you this. If you and I were to be in your gym and I had an outer vest carrier and I had a blade that I carry up here, I've got my taser that I carry up here, I've got magazines that I carry up here, I got my radio mic that's attached to my vest. So I've got the mic behind me, or the cord. if you and I were to get into some type of grappling situation, how would you most effectively dispatch me or try to neutralize me if I came at you wearing that outer vest carrier with all that gear right there? Like, how would you deal with that? If you were a
Well,
bad guy, not that you're a bad guy, but if you were,
I was a bad guy. I would break your knees.
that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Because they have to step before they come to you, right? So as soon as they step forward, then that knee, that leg is a great target. So with timing and practice, and you go for the knees, because if you think about it, every time they step, they got all the weight on it, and they shift their weight. So as soon as they step forward, you back up, and then you time that leg in, and then you could do a nice little side kick or an oblique kick to that kneecap, and that will get you in the door. After that, you just you go to work. If depending on how vicious you are, you could probably use the police officer's knife against him because it's right here in his chest. You know. Other than that, he probably try to go for the knockout. Which I'd like to strike to the throat as much as I can or to the back of the head. So I that seems to slow people down.
Yeah.
Are you guys?
Well, and we have to be. Oh, go ahead, Tami.
No, when you guys do training, you do your DT. Are you trained on how the weapons can be used against you and how to protect against like those moves?
Typically, no. Go ahead, sir.
No, that's all you because I carry it in my belt buckle. That's
Well, I would say no. Well, when I was with my agency, if officers carried certain things on their vests, what I would do is explain to them, yes, it's convenient because you're not carrying it on your belt, right? It creates more space. And this is why typically most officers carry their taser on their vest, their magazines on their vest, and then also a knife somewhere on their vest, maybe even some cutting scissors for medics on the vest. And it's okay if you're going to do that, but just be mindful that when you're in very extreme close quarters with somebody and somebody's got a clinch on you, if they've got a clinch on you, it's not that difficult for them to reach and take your knife out and use it against you, or even pens that you have, right? And or the taser. And I saw that one of my coworkers went out to a call of a guy that was acting very erratic. He wasn't in the right frame of mind. The officer was trying to talk to him. All of a sudden, the suspect went and put him in a clinch. And so the officer's trying to create distance. But what happened? The officer tunnel visioned. And this is what happens under stress. We in law enforcement, we tunnel vision. We've got this whole, when we're stressed, we're looking through this much, right? So we're not seeing the outer, what's happening out there. Well, in this case, the suspect removed the taser from the officer's holster on the vest, and the officer had no idea that his holster was removed. And the suspect managed to turn it on, and he actually tased the officer, and the officer was incapacitated. The officer fell down. At the same time, before he was tased, the officer removed his weapon, his duty weapon. Now, let me ask you this. What do you think his intention was, the officer, by removing his duty weapon? Right? He's going to probably use force, right? Why? Because he recognized, holy crap, the suspect has my taser. And if I'm incapacitated, I can't move. This person can kill me. Problem was, he didn't recognize it fast enough. So as he's removing his duty weapon, suspect tases him. Full incapacitation, officer fell over, and his gun landed. And the suspect was standing right above him, right over him, and in full reach of this gun. Now, fortunately, the suspect did not go for the gun. The suspect ended up retreating. But watching that, I watched the body cam of that, and it happened like that. And you don't even, the officer's perspective, his view on that camera, like all of a sudden it was just two people coming together, all of a sudden distance, and all of a sudden the officer is just falling over, like that quick. But it showed, if you're going to carry things on your vest, you have to know what the limitations are, and you have to know that potentially those things can be used against you. And sir, you've done that with me, where you've had me wear outer vest carrier, and you would control me. We grapple, and you would control me using the carrier. You would just grip the carrier, and you could create leverage, right?
Make a great handle.
You would, yeah. And so again, it goes to showing those limitations. Because of that, when I was on patrol, I never wore an outer vest carrier. I was the old school. I wore my vest underneath my shirt. I didn't carry anything on me. Everything was on my belt. But I also recognize the limitations of that as well. Carrying it on your belt, it can still be used against you, but not as easy, in my opinion, for a suspect to be able to get your tools off of you.
Well, I think
And on that note, Chris, I've noticed that the outer vest carriers are very popular. Most agencies around the country are wearing an outer vest carrier, but they do present a tactical risk, and you have to be aware of that. We had some of our DT instructors and our range instructors that kind of felt like you do, that outer vest carrier was a tactical risk. And during one of the trainings, he actually had somebody with an outer vest carrier on, and he was able to just direct him and move him just by holding the outer vest carrier. And the officer was just helpless because he just didn't have any control, because the outer vest carrier had all the control. And on that same note, wearing your gear on your outer vest carrier, you need to be aware that those are weapons the other guy is going to try to use against you. We actually had one officer that was booking a subject in one of the districts, and nobody else was in the district, and the subject was unhandcuffed because he was getting ready to put him in the cell, and the fight started, and the bad guy went for the officer's medical shears that he had wearing in his vest carrier, and he killed him. He killed him with the medical shears that he had. And you need to be aware that those kinds of things can happen. And weapons retention was another one, Tami, to answer your question. They taught us how to retain our gun. That was the big focus, how to retain the gun and keep the gun from getting taken out of your holster if somebody was trying to take your gun. But they don't talk about the pens or the knives or the medical shears that you're carrying in plain sight for them to get, even the taser. So very little training done to help protect the officer from himself, basically.
Well, and I think having all of that on there too, there's almost like a false sense of security. And I hear it all the time. We've all co-taught women's self-defense classes, and I hear this from females a lot. Well, I carry a gun in my purse. That's nice. First thing they're going to do is take your, what happens when you don't have your purse? Or you're getting into your car, your purse is in the car, and they come from behind you. What are you going to do now? If you don't know how to fight, you're dead. So any weapon that you have, and Chris, you've taught me this, because because of our kids, I don't like to have a gun on me, but I have knives. And you've taught me immediately, if you're going to carry a knife, you have to be prepared to use it and have it used against you. So what are you going to do? So having anything, I think, breaking it down, and even the pen can absolutely be used as a weapon. So how do you combat that? That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. But even we do a lot of self-defense. We do a workshop for women every month, and we actually got one. I got one tomorrow. I'm going to a body fit gym, and we're going to do about 55 ladies. We're going to work with them, and so on. And we ask questions like you were saying. And a lot of ladies do carry weapons, and they carry them in their purse, and they go, well, the question is, how fast can you get to it? And can you find it? Do you have to search, take out some stuff and get that weapon, or is it accessible to a quick draw? And again, like almost connecting with the police officers, they don't practice a draw. They don't practice getting their weapon out, and that's another thing, that they feel good because they have a weapon, but realistically, they won't be able to get to it, and because it's not practiced and it's not at a reliable spot or area, and it's there 24/7. Like in the police, right now we're getting nice weather in Arizona, so we draw our windows down. We to get to a red light, got the windows going down, we got the music going on, and then we get some guy in our window attacking us. 9 out of 10 people don't have any kind of weapon in their car to fight that or protect that. You know what I'm saying? They don't have a sharp blade or anything to fight that off. We don't think like that. So if we carry a weapon, we have to practice it over and over. So if it's in your car, if it's in your purse, and that's the thing with the police officers. practice their draw and so on.
Yeah, what I appreciate your philosophy, sir, is you're great. You're great at empty hand, combatives, right? You can take care of yourself without any weapons, but you also know how to utilize weapons. You know how to use a knife properly, right? Most effectively. You do know how to use sticks if you need to, but also you also know how to shoot, and which is what we brought to your dojo a few years ago was a tactical pistol class for your black belts, right? Because you recognize, depending on the situation, you're going to need to respond differently, right? You're not so focused on, well, I'm a grand master in Kajukenbo, I don't ever need to use a gun or a knife. And the reality is, you don't know what you're going to need until it happens, right? So if you can escalate that force from empty hands all the way to firearms, you're ready to do that. And I've seen you shoot, and you shoot very well, very accurate. Just watching you on the range, I could tell you practiced, and you shot, better than some of the SWAT cops that I know. Because again, that whole philosophy that you carry with you in martial arts to master it, it also transcended into firearms, mastering the firearm, knowing how to be most effective and most efficient with it. And that's what I noticed with you is you put the full system together.
Thank you. To be one of my biggest fears is to be on unfamiliar grounds. In other words, not knowing how to handle a weapon that happens to be there that I need. Like, how do you work this? How do you do this? Or being able to use my environment as a weapon. So that's why we practice gun disarms, knife disarms, stick disarms, bat disarms. We don't have a certain, like most of your karate schools have a club. We get anything that, it could be a beer bottle, kind of give them that, kind of get them prepared for that. It could be a beer bottle. It could be a crowbar. It could be a flashlight. It could be a spoon from the kitchen, whatever it is, so they could welcome it, or like an axe. We treat the axe pretty much the same. We treat it like a machete coming down. So I bring this to the mat to the students so they could be aware, so they don't freak out when they see something like that. Does that make sense?
I like using your environment as knowing what it is, because I did that when I owned my bar. Everything behind the bar was a weapon, and I knew if something was going to happen, I had a beer bottle, and if I needed to, I could break it. And now I have weapons everywhere. And when Chris was working undercover, you learned how to fight in a car and use everything in a car as a weapon, basically.
Yeah. We used to train undercovers and tactical units that supported undercovers. We called it by bus reversal operations. But we teach our students, and sir, you came out on a few of these to show. The edge weapon stuff in this whole process. But we set up the interior of the car to our advantage, because a majority of our drug deals are done inside of cars. And so we use everything inside that car to our advantage. We'll even set it up, and we fight in the car. That's important, is to put students in that environment that they're going to be in, right? Wear what you're going to wear, have what you're going to have, and let's use it. Let's put it to good use. And that's what you do in your gym. The way you structure things, you start with conditioning, right? Every class is always conditioning, because conditioning is so important. It's key. And there were times, especially in the very beginning when I started training with you, I just wanted to throw up. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I still got to train. But you had that bucket that said white belts on it, right? So if any newbies need to throw up, the bucket is right there, right? But with time, what's happening is the conditioning is increasing. So because of the way you structure your class, conditioning comes first. Then we're going to go into technique, and I'm going to instruct it. I'm going to show you, and then you're going to practice that technique with the other students. And you're always mixing everybody up so nobody gets too comfortable. And you want to use different body types, body shapes, male, female, like it doesn't matter. And there's some sparring in there to put it to practical use. And then you end the class with more conditioning, right? And I remember there were times where, we're doing some empty hand striking and fighting and what have you, kicks. And then at the end of the class, you put us through that second conditioning portion of it. And I just remember sometimes I was sweaty, I'm exhausted, and then you tell me, don't let me get in my, don't, or you tell me, uh, get on your back, don't let me get in your guard, right? After a whole class and being completely exhausted, now I'm trying to not let you get in my guard. And then you say, okay, now let me get in your guard. So then you get in my guard. Then all of a sudden you just pull out a training knife and you just start sticking me. You don't tell me what's happening. But I think that is key with law enforcement, is we don't recognize sometimes the threat that's right there. But the way you train is you train me that, the very first time you did that to me, that, okay, if I'm going to be, for some reason, if I find myself in guard position on the streets, on patrol, or even off duty, be aware that this person can pull out a knife. And because you started doing that, this is how you train. I learned the importance of risk control fast, right? Control that knife hand. And this is no longer a jiu-jitsu tournament with rules. This is a life and death situation. I now need to control that knife hand. I now need to neutralize your arm, whether it's with a break, whether it's, whatever I need to do, but I need to get myself out of that situation. And that's what I really appreciated about your style of training. And I don't know if they teach that in other gyms, but you bring the reality, the real life, potential dangers, the way you train, the way you teach.
You're one of the police officers there. That's why we take it to that level. Like I said, we make sure that the police officers are getting that, and everybody else might not want that. They're there for they're there for just a black belt or whatever. But the police officers, I make it my responsibility. I make it personal for them to learn a little bit more, because they could stay alive, so they could go home to their family, and because they're out there protecting us, and we got to take care of them. So yeah,
Well,
keeping it real and keeping it practical,
It's really important message for anybody that is an instructor, whether it's a law enforcement instructor or a martial arts instructor, but having the real world application to it, and you got to know that it's actually going to work. So I know there was a training situation that Chris was in, where the trainer was teaching to shoot through the windshield and assuming that the shot was going to go straight, and that's how you're going to do it. Do you want to speak on that a little bit, of how training can go? You got to know that it's going to actually be real in the real world.
Yeah, you can't be teaching based off of theory. You got to teach based off of experience. So yeah, so in that example, that's part of the BIBUS class that we were teaching. My co-instructor was telling people, "Oh no, you can shoot through the windshield and it'll hit your target. It'll go straight on." And well, I asked him, "Well, have you done that before?" He said, "No, but he's seen it on video. He's seen it done." I said, "No, we're not going to teach that. We're not going to train that unless we know firsthand. We do it ourselves." So we actually got a windshield, and several windshields actually, and we shot through the windshield, and sure enough, it did go through. But because we practice on that, I can now say, yes, this will, with my experience, it will go through and hit your target. But again, it's that practical stuff, that we have to know, will this really work? And I know what you teach works because I used it. I used it on the streets on patrol. And it's funny to see the difference by somebody who is trained and somebody who's not trained, the officers that weren't. And I can give you a handful of situations where the officers that weren't trained, they come across as being scared, fearful, versus somebody like me that was trained. I had a little more confidence in my abilities. Like, I know I can probably control this person. But the other thing too is, those that weren't trained, they kind of take forever to go hands-on with somebody that needs to be arrested. There's probable cause to arrest this person. Those that haven't been trained, they hesitate to go hands-on, to put some kind of control. The problem with that is the bad guy knows they're going to go to jail, right? And the longer you prolong that contact, you're going to give them the opportunity to be able to get ready to fight back. And that's the thing I noticed, is once I developed PC, I had no, I had no hesitation to go hands-on with somebody and to get them in some type of risk control, but also too, not just grabbing somebody willy-nilly like you see untrained officers do. There's no control there. The moment you grab somebody, you've now telegraphed to them where you're at, what your intention is. So now they can respond to that. So the moment I go hands-on with somebody, I'm putting them in some kind of lock, right? Some kind of position to where they can't respond. And before they know it, it's too late. They know they're at the disadvantage. And 9 times out of 10, they don't fight. They just give up. The one time that they do fight, which has happened, the way you taught me is it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to look pretty, but it's going to be very effective. And I remember a situation. My last year working with PD, we had a guy who was a career criminal. His background, he had aggravated assaults against police officers. He was all tatted up. He served time in prison. Well, he'd given us a false name, and my partner was running him, and actually he had a little portable fingerprint machine, and he printed them. And while I'm sitting there and I'm talking to the guy, and I'm just kind of letting him know, I'm kind of giving him hints that we're not going to arrest him. You know, I kind of tell him, oh, when we leave, where are you going to go? Because you can't hang out here, right? So I'm kind of sending those messages to him that he's not under arrest and that we're not going to arrest him because I don't want him to think he's under arrest yet. Well, my partner, who's a pretty good sized guy, he's running his name on the computer in his car, and now he's coming back. And my partner, you know, is very stern, very serious, and he's walking back, and I'm like, oh man, the guy's got a warrant. I can tell just by what my partner's his body language, and so could the suspect. Suspect could tell too, like, oh crap, they know who I am. I'm going to get arrested. And again, right as my partner was going to grab him, the guy decided that he was going to start to fight. And we took him down to the ground. And again, you and I, sir, we had developed this training for law enforcement, and I call it the shredder. I don't know if you remember that, but and that's what I used on him, right? I used my body weight and I controlled him, and you could just feel he just all of a sudden he started whimpering because the pain control that I put on him. I wasn't messing around. I don't want to prolong this fight as long as it had, because the longer that fight goes, higher likelihood suspect's going to get hurt, higher likelihood officers are going to get hurt. So I put this technique on him, and he started to whimper, and that allowed the other officer to get control of his hands and cuff him. The moment he was cuffed, you could just feel his body just completely relax. That whole confrontation lasted maybe 5 seconds, but in that 5 seconds, when we took him down initially, he started to get back up. And I remember thinking, wait, this is not supposed to happen. Like when we use force on somebody, it's supposed to be very effective. He started to get back up, and that's when I readjusted my weight and I readjusted my grip on him. And that's when he started to whimper, and then he gave up after that. But again, I contribute that to your training, the way you train me on how to deal with people. Because the longer that fight goes, we're going to get hurt. Or if we're so exhausted, and I see this all the time with law enforcement, they're so exhausted from fighting with somebody for so long, their only alternative is lethal force. Even if it's lethal force against somebody that has no weapons on them. And now that opens up that officer, yes, he survived, he or she survived, but it's also going to open them up to, scrutiny from the media and even from the criminal justice system. So it's important, one, that officers are conditioned and they're trained so that they don't have to fight this long fight and eventually have to use lethal force.
Well, and on the flip side of that too, if you're not trained, and I've talked on this before, I'm very passionate about it, but if you're not trained and you see that fear, you have the hesitation, we see it all the time on body cam footage. They're so quick to draw a weapon, whether it's the taser or the gun. They don't know, they get scared. They haven't practiced with anything. They don't necessarily know risk control or how to take it down, especially if it's a smaller officer versus a bigger person. They immediately go for a weapon. And that is what's getting everybody in trouble. And that's what, is pissing off the community, because like that person was not armed. They were not a threat. The officer did not have proper training, and they reacted from fear. So again, little soapbox that I really feel that martial arts should be much more pushed, I think, in law enforcement, to have some of those just simple risk control. Like some of the things, it doesn't have to be fancy. Some of the techniques, back of the arm is still bruised. Like you can take people down with like very little moves that are effective if you know what you're doing.
G-locks, arm locks, wrist locks, those are great for cops, because there's a way too. There's the passive, when the guy gives up and he gives you the arm and then you get him, that's passive. Everything's gonna pretty much work. But then when they get aggressive, when they got a lot of hair on their arm, or where they're slippery or sweaty or even bloody and you can't get that hand, you need backup. You need to know what to do after that. You can't just rely on one thing.
Well, and the other thing too that you teach in your gym is the team tactics, right? The small team tactics, how to work together, how to communicate. If you're going to control somebody's arm, each of you are controlling an arm, and so you teach law enforcement how to work together, because how many times have we seen where one officer's doing one thing, the other one's doing the opposite. One guy wants to take the person down, but the other one's trying to prop them up against the wall, right? They're neutralizing each other. So again, that's something I appreciate with your training, is teaching those little small team tactics.
You said that is funny though, just off the subject. Well, teaching that to the kids now. I've been blessed with having two cousins or two brothers, or brother and sister, and I go, well, that's could be their right hand man. So I'll get the two cousins inside, and I'll surround them with other guys, other people, and these guys have to defend themselves. They have to break out of the circle, but yet they have to take care of each other. So that's a very powerful thing, and we got that from teaching the police officers that, and bringing it down to your family now, I guess. But teamwork, it's everything, man.
Well, that's a great segue too, because I wanted to talk about that too. Like, yes, officers should be having some sort of martial arts training and be able to have that control, but also, proactively for departments, working with the community, putting on some classes. We talked about this a little bit before, but women's self-defense classes. A lot of the calls that cops are going out to are women were abused in some way and they didn't have any way of getting out of this. And Chris is a really great teacher when it comes to, he was a homicide detective, and he talks about how to protect yourself and get as much DNA on you, whether you're going to come out alive or not. You need to know how to get DNA on you so that the detectives can figure out who this bad guy is. And so having some of that for the departments to put on or work with dojos in their area, putting on women's self-defense class actually will help the department, because it's going to reduce their caseload. It's going to empower the women in the community. And I personally feel that all women should be taking some sort of self-defense, whether it's martial arts or not, but some sort of self-defense. And I think it should start with kids, teaching them. I know there are more girls that are learning how to fight now. Back in my day, that wasn't a girl thing. That wasn't ladylike. That was for the boys. The boys learned how to wrestle. The boys did the karate, and the girls, we didn't. It's more everybody's inclusive now. Another soapbox tangent for the parents out there, but if you have a teenage girl, put them in a self-defense class. I think we should all be learning how to do those little things.
And sir, I don't know if you remember, one of your students actually used what you taught her and stuff from the women's self-defense training when she was in college. Do you remember that?
That's Mercedes.
You want to share that?
Her mom
story, because it's a great story.
Yeah, her mom still trains with us right now, and she got married, and she's doing real good now. But when she was in college, she had a guy follow her in a parking lot. And he noticed that, because she was aware. She tried to go left and right, and this guy definitely following me. So she picked up the pace and turned around and confronted him, and was able to defend herself. Kicked the guy in the groins a couple times, slowed him down, and it was able to run and escape. So she still talks and shares that story with a lot of other women, taking a stand and knowing what to do though. So. It's important.
Well, the interest was that the one where the suspect was actually wearing a cup.
He was not yeah, he was not a newbie. Yeah. It was not his first rodeo. So yeah, he was ready.
Right. And so
She was still able to hurt him enough to the point that she was able to get away.
yeah, and it all goes back to her training, right?
Yes.
And okay, she kicked him in the groin, but he's got protection down there. Like you said, he hasn't done this. This is not his first time. And okay, it didn't work, but she still kept working her way through and not just give up and say, oh, wait, he's got a cup. That was my go-to move, and now I'm going to give up. She fought. She fought her way out of that situation. So it goes to training, it goes to mindset, it goes to problem solving even, right? How do I solve this problem so I can get out of it? Because I mean, we always want to make it black and white. You kick here, it'll be effective and you'll neutralize the suspect. Yeah. And that's not reality. Reality is you might kick there, might work, might not work. If it doesn't work, what's your next step? Always have a plan A, have a plan B, have a plan C. If plan B doesn't work, go to C. If C doesn't work, go back to A, right? And you're constantly shifting your tactics. The key is not to give up.
Yeah, the thing is, it's a lot of people treat martial arts like a sport, and it's not a sport; it's a way of life. And we do the same moves thousands of times. That's why we get to call master of the art, right? But we do them so many times that it doesn't do it; the body does it. You know what I'm saying? You can't say, okay, well, look, he's going to come this way. You do this and you do that, and then you're gone. It's not, because he might come sideways, he might come, in a different angle, and your technique doesn't work, and then now what? So building in the mix is what we teach, right? So doing the repetition over and over and over, so you don't have to think about it. Your body sees opportunity and hits the right targets. But you could walk out of there and go, what did I do? I didn't do nothing. My body did it all by itself. Because of repetition, and repetition. That's our goal. Because when you come thinking, it's too late. You got to react. He throws you're waiting for a right punch, and he throws the jab, and you go, oh, my game's over. I was expecting this. So repetition, when anything comes your way, you're gonna react because you've done it thousands of times.
Well, and that's where Chris and I teach about the conscious mind and the subconscious. Repetition gets it into your subconscious. So when you first learn how to drive a car, you're checking everything, and you really have to think about what I was just like old school, like driving a stick. Nobody does that anymore. But you have to think about what you're doing. And then after a few years, it's just you get in and it's on autopilot because now you've learned how to do it. It's the same thing with fighting, with weapons. Repetition is absolutely key. And I think that people kind of get not lazy, but you kind of forget about it. It's like, I know how to shoot. I know how to fight. I know that I could do it, but you haven't done it. I took 2 weeks off because we had to go on a business trip, and I came back in like, oh crap, my muscles already forgot how to do this.
Well,
yeah,
sir,
they get complacent.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is you get complacent. And, when I went through the academy in 1985, defensive tactics was a joke. They teach you some pressure points that when you get out on the street, you find very quickly that they didn't work. And now the fight's on. And so as through my career, we never got regular defensive tactic training. And once they started offering it, it was mandatory. And they wouldn't get a lot of input because what they learned in the academy was so bad that they don't trust who's teaching them now to be any better. And it wasn't until the end of my career that I learned that, that they made it mandatory, and you had to start doing it at least once a year. But getting the training isn't enough. You have to be able to practice it. Just like you guys are saying, you have to get it. It has to be second nature. It has to be something that you do without even thinking about it. You have to practice. Just like when you're drawing your gun and shooting, they tell you want to muscle memory. Well, the same thing with defensive tactics and defending yourself. It should be muscle memory. You shouldn't have to think, oh, where was that pressure point that they wanted me to push that I could take this guy down? It should just automatically come, and it should be part of your routine.
Yeah, no, I agree, Greg, and you're right. And even, sir, when you said, you train so you can react to it. I think it's even much more than reaction. It's response, right? Because you train, you will respond to it versus reacting, right? Reacting is kind of based out of fear and out of kind of that, oh shit kind of thing, like, oh, doing that. That's reaction. But responding is different, right? It's because you've been trained, so now you respond properly. And I think that is the key there, is to get in there and to train. And it's what I like about your gym, especially you talked earlier about teaching kids, the team tactics and stuff, but you also teach about respect. You also teach about discipline, and I think that is sometimes, some gyms, I won't say any names, but sometimes they get a bad reputation because they train people but don't train the integrity side of things, right? You're being taught how you could potentially hurt somebody, but there's some responsibility that comes with that. You can't be a bully. You can't go out and let's test what we learn at the bar and just go fight random people, right? There's a big difference. You're really big on the integrity side of things.
All right.
Martial arts without philosophy or without history, it's not martial arts. It's just fighting. The respect, the self-control, the honesty, the courage, the integrity, the loyalty. Those are all principles that you have to live by. You go to our dojo, you guys have been there, you ask any of our students what the 3Ds are, they're going to tell you desire, dedication, and discipline. You go, what's the R for? They're going to tell you respect, first thing, eye contact, second, listening, and the third is treating others the way you want to be treated. So without that, it's just street fighting. It's you're not an artist. You're just more for the martial part of it. And complete martial artist has the full package. You got to be respectful. You got to be humble. And teaching at a young
every episode of Cobra Kai, it's fighting.
My first school was actually Cobra Kai. My instructor was straight out of the comic book. He was something else. But like your son, he has that down to earth. I mean, he got to down now. If I was to ask him anywhere he's at, what's he art for? He'll tell you straight out, respect. And that's important. I don't think it's taught anymore. Even the parents that we have now, they kind of just drop them off with us and like, help me. I go, well, you got to do it at home too, So we work in a triangle. We work with the family, we work with their school, and we work together. And because it takes a village to raise a kid. So we start with meditation. We start teaching them about the history of the art, and then we start getting into the way we should treat people. Don't treat them by colors, or we treat them just like humans. And teaching them how to be respectful and yet humble.
Yeah,
important. And I see that. I see that whenever my son is over there training. I see how the kids in your gym are very disciplined. They're very well behaved, and I know you've taught groups of kids who have come into the gym and they're just out of control sometimes, right? And you can see the night and day difference between kids that you train that are disciplined, much more well behaved, versus those other ones who have no training. And I think that's important.
It's sad too, because even the adults, everybody in the dojo, when they walk in, they salute everybody. I'm not salute, but they shake hands, or they get, nowadays got a COVID. It's a bumper, it's a fist, right? But everybody gets that. Everybody gets adults, as young as 66 years old. They're still going on their way and respecting the 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds and moms and grandmas, because the first thing in the art should be respect. And the second thing in the art should be family. And then the third should be teaching something that works in the street, teaching practical art. So that's our values, and we put it on the wall, respect, family, and teaching, practical martial arts.
Well, and I think that's also important, that I think some departments need to remember that within the walls, because that's one of the biggest challenges that we hear. Yes, the job itself as law enforcement is dangerous. When you're out on the street, you're dealing with all sorts of different people, but a lot of the stress actually comes from within the walls of the department. And everybody, and it's kind of the same. I understand, like, when you have teenagers at home, they're comfortable and they're little shits at your house, but then you go and you talk to them, oh no, they're so respectful when they come over here. And the parents are like, my kids? It's kind of the same thing, like within the department where you can kind of relax and you can get some of that off. But I think a lot of officers take it out on each other, and they need to remember that you are family. You're there to have each other's backs and to remember to respect each other. Even if you don't like them, you don't have to like a person in order to respect them. Show them respect and have some level of trust there. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So let's go around like we do. And what is just a really easy, simple piece of advice that you would give to whoever's listening to this, whether it is a law enforcement professional or somebody that's just tuning in, that's interested in martial arts? Chris, we'll start with you.
Oh, okay. Well, I think as a former defensive tactics instructor, I would say don't lock yourself into just one art. MMA, for me, the practical nature of MMA itself, I think is probably the most suited for law enforcement, because you're going to be dealing with stand-up. You're going to be dealing with takedowns. There are going to be a situation where you might be on your back. So yes, you're going to need to know some, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to try to get out of that situation. Muay Thai with the strikes, with the elbows and knees, sometimes you're going to need that. I think finding a system that kind of covers many different areas. It really bugs me sometimes when these agencies out there only want Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's it. That's all they want to train their officers. And it's like, wow, you're painting your officers into this little corner, of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And, I always kind of joke, sorry, I've joked with you. I go, any Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, I can beat you with your own rules, even though I'm not a BJJ practitioner at all. But I can beat you at your own rules. Well, what are the rules of BJJ? Are they allowed to pull out knives? Are they allowed to pull out guns? Because that's what I'll do, right? That's what a bad guy will do. So essentially, you're going to be beaten by your own rules. So you've got to be careful. Don't lock yourself into just one-dimensional system. You've got to be able to do stand-up. You've got to be able to do takedowns. You've also got to be able to work on the ground as well, on top of, your firearms, staying on top of that type of training. But you want an all-around system. Greg, what about you?
Well, don't be complacent. Practice, practice, practice. Practice with your firearm. Practice, get that muscle memory with your firearm. Learn how to shoot. If you have the opportunity to shoot more than, we only shot twice a year. That was it. And if you have the opportunity to shoot more than twice a year, take it, practice. And if you need to learn defensive tactics, take as much training as you can get. Maybe find an MMA, go see the Grand Master, somebody that is culturally competent, somebody that wants to, that knows you're a cop and is going to help you on the street. Don't go to just get your black belt. Go to learn how to defend yourself and how to protect yourself and everyone else. And then practice. Get that muscle memory down. Learn how to defend yourself. And that is just the most important thing. That'll build your confidence level. That will build your safety. You'll be more aware of your surroundings. Just make sure you don't get complacent.
Awesome.
What about you, sir?
To be open-minded, don't get stuck in your own ways. Be open-minded. Be a white belt mentality. Learn, see, and then test it. Don't think this is the right way. Just put it through the test, and then have that instructor know where you come from and know what your needs are, so you could cater and mold to your lifestyle. But I would just test everything, and I would test it with different people, different sizes, and put it to work and make sure that this technique is going to work for you in the street when you use it. Not because, we've seen it in videos, right? In YouTube, when the instructor does this and the guy flips, right? So you want to make sure that it works. And this is a takedown. Let me have that 300-pounder. Let me have that 120-pounder. Shoot, let me have that lady right there standing there. Let me try it all in different sizes, different shapes, and different forms. So you could be 100% confident that when I use this in the street, it's going to be there for me. And then if it does work for you, and then just drill it, like Greg said, drill it, and make it yours.
Well, I like that. Building on that as well, keeping your ego in check, having humility. It doesn't matter if you are a black belt or you are a grand master. There will be somebody that will humble you. And so to go in and be okay with that and ask like proactively again, how can you be humbled? You have all this training, but we can always learn something new. And then my last little 2 cents, I'm going to take the female perspective. Again, for women officers, I really think women officers should be having martial arts training. But women in general, if you're scared, it's intimidating for females, walking into a gym, walking into a dojo, if you don't have any of that training. Um, I was fortunate. I came in and I was a little bit more comfortable before I started with kickboxing, and it was a really nice group. But when I decided to transition into Kaju, you weren't there for my first class, but when I walked in, my gi was too big. I had to roll up the sleeves. Chris had to tie my belt for me, and it was me and all black belts. And I'm like, and you weren't there. So I was like, I don't want to, I changed my mind. But but to push past and to show up and keep going, because it's a great community to be a part of. So wherever you are tuning in, listening, reach out to your local dojos, to whoever you have. And if you don't have anybody or you're not sure, please feel free to reach out to any of us. And I will put Sal with his martial arts. It's NAC Martial Arts in Gilbert, Arizona. I'm going to put his information so you can reach out to them as well. Ask questions if you're local. Come take classes. Here, a plug for you. They will give you a week free for any of their training. But thank you all for being here, and to anybody that's tuning in, thank you again, and until next week.